Welcome to this video series on the Making International in Korea. We'll begin in this week of videos of the description and explanation of the core principles and practice of international law and discuss the primary sources of international law, like treaties, customary international law, along with the topic such as statehood, state responsibility, and sovereignty and jurisdiction. And more specifically, in this week, we're working on the Korea's encounter with modern international legal system and status of international law in the domestic legal system of Korea and international relations of the Northeast Asia and Korea and Chinese tributary system and the fall of tributary system and the rise of the treaty-based relations and introduction of the Western international law into East Asia. So you may see that the how general understanding of the international law to apply in the Korea and intertwine with the other neighboring states in Asia. So in this lecture, we may understand the various dynamics of the international law in terms of the Asian states in this region. The first, let me touch upon the international order of East Asia and in the area of international law. We may say that the acceptance and status Korea in international law. Before the introduction of jus publicum European into East Asia, let's say public European law into the East Asia, there exists an international regional normative system that regulated the relations between and among China and many political entities around her, such as Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, among others. This regional normative system was referred to as so-called Sinocentric order. This Sinocentric order was based on the concept of the Sinocentrism. Sinocentrism was a belief that understood the world to be composed of the center and periphery. The center was civilized China, ruled by an emperor who received his mandate from heaven. The emperor was referred to as the son of heaven, and the Chinese dynasties were called celestial empires. Uncivilized people, or barbarians, supposedly inhabited the outer regions. Naturally, relations between the civilized central China and uncivilized peripheral political entities around her were understood as relations between superior and inferior. A superior and inferior term is not the same with when we call the European context with the dynamics, but in Asian context, superior and inferior very much used in various cases. The inferior paid tribute to superior China regularly as a function of a tributary system. It may be said that this was the most important component of the Sinocentric order. Sometimes the Sinocentric order and tributary system were treated as one and the same. As a matter of fact, under the Sinocentric order, the trade of goods between China and other dynasties was conducted only in the form of the peripheral entities' payment of tribute and the reception of the return restores from China. The trade under the tributary system was sometimes more beneficial to tributary payer than a tributary receiver. The second feature of a Sinocentric order was the Chinese emperor's installation of the kings in the peripheral dynasties. This means that, in formal terms, a king of a peripheral dynasty, such as the king of Korea, or king of Vietnam, was a subject of the Chinese emperor. You may see that the many Korean movies dealing with the Joseon dynasty, when Joseon dynasty dealing with China in terms of installation of our king, how that kind of things can be possible. You may understand the term of the Sinocentric order. The last feature of Sinocentric order was the use of a Chinese calendar. Under the Chinese calendar system, years were counted by using Chinese era reign name. Consequently, the third feature of the Sinocentric order meant official use of Chinese era reign named by Chinese dynasties. As the use of Chinese calendar was an important element of the Sinocentric order, if a tributary dynasty began to use its own inherent era reign name, that means and symbolize an exit from the Sinocentric order and becoming unequal with China in its normative or legal status. Under the Sinocentric order, Chinese dynasties had taken the policy of reign and bridle. This policy meant keeping peripheral dynasties and tribes under the Chinese bridle, through the use of appeasement by their rulers rather than the use of force. On the basis of this policy, China did not intervene in the domestic affairs of the barbarians, and the use of force was not the means by which China accomplished its foreign policy goals. Barbarians were allowed autonomy, and their inherited customs were respected by China. Korea had begun the tribute to China, has been a tributary dynasty like Yukgu, the current name of the Okinawa, and Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Burma. It had willingly accepted the Sinocentric order and was a dynasty, the kingdom, which paid the tribute more frequently. This frequency of tribute payments was understood as a privilege rather than a burden. Korea herself had pride in her own level of civilization and referred to itself as a little Chinese civilization. Japan also paid tribute to China. However, it was not a typical tribute dynasty because its payment of tributes was sporadic. The relations between Japan and China was marked by a lack of contact in comparison to Korea. This is a general understanding, what we understood in these days. However, various academies pose a different idea and different understanding, so we may get back to this issue again later. However, what we call here is that in terms of the Sinocentric system, it is not the same one with what we call the European system, which produced the international legal system in these days. And how, in what sense is it different, we can figure out during this lecture. The fact that Korea paid tribute regularly to China and accepted her own imperial status to China without any serious resistance under the Sinocentric order may give the impression that Korea had been thoroughly under the control of China. However, the Chinese policy of reign and bridle respected the inherited custom of tributary politics and allowed their domestic self-government. Korea was no exception in this respect. Under the Sinocentric order, the political and legal matter of Korea were totally left in the hands of Koreans. This is the reason why the relations between Korea and China under the Sinocentric order is called a formal or the ceremonial one. When Korea opened its doors to the West for the first time, Western countries had a difficulty to understand the status of Korea since it was under the Sinocentric order. a question was raised among Western countries as to whether Korea was a vassal state or independent sovereign state. It was rather advantageous for Korea to be regarded as a vassal state in terms of avoiding international responsibility, whereas it also hoped to be recognized as an independent sovereign state in all other respects. On the contrary, China put an emphasis on the state of Korea as an independent state so that it would not carry the burden of the international responsibility for Korea as a suzerain state, which it was supposed to assume. However, it continued to assert the Korea's dependencies on China with the intention of putting Korea under its political influence. Despite this initial confusion, Western countries treated Korea as a sovereign state. Japan made continuous effort to receive confirmation from China that Korea was indeed an independent sovereign state, so that it could prepare its first step to invade Korea by ending the dominant subordinate relations between China and Korea. So understanding of the Korea's relations with China within the Sinocentric system is very much important to understand the Asia's, in particular Korea's understanding or acceptance of international law in this regard. Thank you.